Everyone, it's 9 o'clock. Call our regular council meeting to order for Thursday, June 18th, 2026. Welcome council colleagues, staff, members of the public. At this time, I will ask that we pause for a moment of reflection, and while doing so, please also keep in our thoughts the families and all those affected by the tragic vehicle accident that happened last week in Mapleton. Thank you. Our land acknowledgement reads as follows. We acknowledge that Perth County is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe peoples who have a long-standing relationship with the land and waters of the region. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit people who call this territory home. As a county, we have a responsibility for reconciliation and the continued stewardship of the land on which we live and work. Item 4, disclosure of pecuniary interest. I'll ask at this time, council may declare pecuniary interest now or at any time during the meeting. Looking around the room, I don't see any hands up. Just want to double check. Do we have Councillor Agates online at this moment? No, we do not. Okay. Okay, we'll keep an eye on that for Councillor Agates to join us remotely. So, no, go ahead.
I just got a text that she, the link that is not letting her in, that was sent.
Okay, so we'll have IT work on establishing the link there for Councillor Agates. In the meantime, no pecuniary interests have been declared on the floor, and we'll wait Councillor Agates to join us. In the meantime, item 5, confirmation of the agenda. Agenda was circulated previously. I'll just double check with CA Wolf to see if any changes have been made to the agenda that was circulated.
No.
Okay, no changes have been made. So the resolution reads as follows: is that the June 18th, 2026 agenda be approved as circulated. Moved by Councillor McDermott, seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, it's carried. Thank you. Moving to section 6, our consent agenda portion of the meeting. There are 26 consent agenda items posted for council's consideration. Colleagues, does anyone wish to pull any of these for further discussion? Councillor Caseyberg, go ahead, please.
Yes, item 6.21. Sorry, I'm not 6.22. I'll get my numbers right this morning. On food insecurity.
6.22. Food insecurity. Anyone else wish to pull something? All right. Councillor Caseyberg, go ahead. 6.22. I think that's the food insecurity crisis as submitted by Township of North Stormont. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Warden Fantowski. Just to the scale, I'm not sure whether we have recently heard anything on this topic, but certainly, if I may share with council, I convened a roundtable discussion in Perth about food insecurity. And some of the statistics that were shared from the agencies who were represented were absolutely startling. The amount of products leaving the local food bank in Listwell is 30% up year over year. The substantial jump in the amount of food being delivered by the Huron Food Distribution Center to various food banks across their catchment area. In excess in some measures of 400% increases in food, and the demand has got to the point where, at least in North Perth, some of those agencies involved in trying to support those living with food insecurity are being overwhelmed by appointments. They're on wait lists to get appointments to visit the food bank, for example, in North Perth. that are longer than they've ever been. We also learned that there has been a substantial surge in some of those. So a few of my colleagues who serve on MSSC would probably have heard this information in terms of the social services lists that are being managed by the Consolidated Service Manager. We are in a crisis. I just wanted to see whether we have issued a statement about this with regards to another a resolution from another council in our consent agenda recently, because if we have not, then I would like to suggest that we take action and issue a letter of support for 6.22. But if we have done it recently, then let's deal with that. I asked that of the CEO, Warden Trepesky.
CEO Wolf, can you confirm if we have issued something in the past to the specific or?
And thank you. Through the warden, council has given staff direction to do up a report and bring it back to council in terms of what county council can do to assist with this program. And I have reached out to the writers of the last report that came to council that generated that direction, as well as one of the agencies that is experiencing the high level of demand. So that topic is coming back to council.
Excellent. Thank you. If I might, just as a supplementary, with due haste, please. And I will contribute my notes from that listening session to you as a courtesy.
Thanks, Councillor. Deputy Warden Mark, go ahead, please.
I would love to support that, and I would also like to see this council hear Chris Allen from the Huron Food Distribution Center to come to our council with his plan.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, I had occasion this week to watch First South's council meeting that was held this week. I watched it online and I listened intently to Chris Allen's presentation. And it was quite, yeah, it's quite revealing, and it's quite, I don't know what the word is, but it's a dire situation, I guess is the best way I can describe it. And it's certainly not, there doesn't seem to be any end in sight to the need, to the difficulties. So we await staff's report, and the Councillor Kiesenberg has noted with due haste and sense of urgency, as I sense from Councillor Kiesenberg and Deputy Warden Moore. So thank you. So if there any other discussion on that subject? If not, the recommendation reads as follows: that council receives the consent agenda items 6.1 to 6.26 and approves the June 4th, 2026 council minutes. Moved by Deputy Warden Moore, seconded by Councillor McDermott. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. Thank you. Just want to check in with IT. Are we reached Councillor Higgins? Looks like she's on there now.
I'm here, but I don't know how to get my video to work.
Okay. All right, well, we've got you on audio so far, so we'll carry on. Thanks, Councillor Higgins. All right, so section 7, public meetings, public hearings, and delegations. We have none listed on our agenda, so we'll move into staff reports. First one is 8.1 under the CAO's department. 8.1.1, the council remuneration bylaw. We welcome Mary McKean, our HR director. The floor is yours. As Councillor Higgins, once the reports are completed, if your video isn't working, I'll ask you if you have any questions. Okay, go ahead, Marion, please.
Perfect, thanks. Through the warden. So this report is essentially a housekeeping report, which updates the bylaws to reflect the decisions that council made back in November, and then as well confirms the decisions about the half and a full day per diems and conference amounts. So basically it just enshrines them into our bylaws. So for just as a reminder, we did it was approved to enhance the compensation for warden, deputy warden, and counselor on a phased-in basis, starting out with the introduction of the new council at the end of this year. So this report reflects that. I will pause for any questions.
Okay. Colleagues on the floor, any questions? Councillor Eggetts, any questions for Marion on that report?
No, no questions.
Okay. All right, there are no further questions. And recommendation reads as follows, in two parts. Firstly, that council receives the council remuneration bylaw report, and that council approves the updated council remuneration bylaw for the required readings. So mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Caseberg, seconded by Councillor Wilhelm. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Members on the floor, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Councillor Eggetts, how do you vote? Councillor Eggetts, can you hear us?
Sorry, they're trying to talk to me at the other end to get my video to work. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, no, we'd called the question on the vote. I just wanted to ask how you voted.
I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that motion's approved unanimously. Thanks, Marion. Second item is under section 8, staff reports. 8.2, economic development and tourism. 8.2.1, we have an economic development and tourism update. Joining us is Justin Diaz. He will lead us in the report. We're also joined by Claire Borison and Meredith Forget. I don't see Amy here today, but okay, good. Thanks, Justin. Yours, go ahead, please.
Great, thank you. We're just to be very brief this morning, just an update report since we talked with council last month. So the report is before you. Maybe just one quick note about the Empowered Women Who Lead event was it was stated in the report that we presented that event, but unfortunately the event was postponed at the last minute. So that'll be something that'll be presented at a later date. I wanted just to remind council of our business tour next week at Millbank Furniture. If you haven't registered but would like to come, please do join us. And then lastly, just call attention to the Explore brochure that you all received today, which launched earlier this month. Re-envisioning of our flavor map, or sorry, our farm gate map into a flavor map, which is included and embedded right within the brochure. And our tourism team is busy distributing those 80,000 copies across the region. So again, just a brief update, but welcome any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Councillors, any questions for Justin on the report? Deputy Warden Orr, go ahead, please.
Just a comment, great report, and you guys are so busy, and I'm extremely happy with these. I keep them in my car and I hand them out, and they're beautiful. I am impressed.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Recommendation reads as follows, is that council receives the economic development and tourism report for information. By Councillor Kellum, second by Councillor Smith. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. We have Councillor Eggetts on video, so welcome. Thanks, Justin. And thanks to economic development staff for the excellent work that they do. All right, moving to 8.3, corporate services departments. We're joined by Stefan Zalev, our executive director. And first up is 8.3.1. We have the April and May 2026 forestry inspectors report. Good morning, Stefan. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Warden, Deputy Warden, so all these members of the public. Before you is the report of our law enforcement official, Marvin Smith, on the May and April forest inspections. In April 2026, there were 8 completed notices of intent. And in May, they were 26, they were 4. If there are any questions, the report outlines the developments in each of these 12 cases. If there are any questions, I'll have to relay those. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Stefan. Colleagues, any questions on this report? Councillor Smith, go ahead, please.
Thanks, through you, Warren. Thanks, Stefan. Just curious, page 105. Notice of intent number 2, and there's others as well. They list, obviously, you got April 6, 2026, but there's 2 dates before that. January 2nd, 23, May 9th, 23. As well as going down further, there's a couple other notice of intents that list prior dates. I don't recall seeing this before. Just curious as to what those dates represent. The prior ones. And as well on page, this is number 2, if I may. 108, which is the notice of intent from May. The number 4, number of dates, and then it lists all those dates as explanations of, I guess, assume when it happened. Looks like there's one typo. We've got November 15th, 2026. On page 108 as well. I'm sure it's 2025. Just curious about those prior dates, what they represent.
Stefan, go ahead.
Through the warden, my understanding is that these dates are they reflect the contacts that the landowners have had with our law enforcement official and discussions on how to proceed. On some dates, they are potentially some inspections that are scheduled and some other arrangements. These are the dates that are reflected here, are dates that are presented in the reports that as we received them from Mr. Smith.
Follow up? What? Any other questions on this report? Okay, seeing none. Recommendation reads that council receives the April and May 2026 forestry inspectors report for information. Moved by Councillor Smith, second by Councillor Wilhelm. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. All right, thanks, Stefan. Okay, moving to our next agenda item, 8.3.2, budget policy. Ray Bridges, our treasurer, will lead us in this report, and we have Daniel Hubbard, our deputy treasurer, attending as well. Morning, Corey, floor is yours.
Thank you, Warren Trenkowski and members of council. I'm here to present the county's new budget policy. This policy formalizes the framework that guides how staff and council develop, approve, and administer both the operating and capital budgets. This policy strengthens our commitment to sound financial governance, transparency, and long-term sustainability. It ensures our budget practices are consistent, evidence-based, and aligns with county strategic priorities. The purpose of it is to establish a structured approach to budgeting that aligns with the county's strategic plan, legislative requirements, and long-term asset management needs. It ensures financial decisions are data-informed, equitable, and forward-looking. The policy is grounded in 7 guiding principles: strategic alignment, fiscal responsibility, transparency, sustainability, efficiency, equity, and risk management. These principles ensure that every budget decision supports long-term financial health and the public value. The policy also sets out the roles and responsibility within the organization, provides the overall budget structure, and sets the timelines for annual budgets. In closing, this policy strengthens our financial governance framework and ensures consistency, transparent, and sustainable approach to budgeting. It positions the county to continue to deliver high-quality services with planning responsible for the future. And I'm here happy to answer any questions that council may have.
All right, thanks, Corey. Colleagues, questions for Corey on the budget policy presentation? Deputy Warden Orr, go ahead, please.
When, whether it's this report or the next report, just forward looking, is there any way that we could have a list of the projects that we know have to happen? And I'm gonna use the example of the courthouse. I mean, that was a long time in the queue to happen. And yet we hadn't put money really away for its renovation. And I just want to ensure that in the future, if we know something's coming our way, that we have properly saved specifically for things like that. Maybe it's a new ambulance site, Listowel, or something like that. Is there any way we could have a list of that?
Through the word to Council Deputy Warden Orr's question, yes, that project list can be provided to council. Just further to the Perth County Courthouse, it was a decision that potentially levying that on the tax to put in the reserves wasn't considered, is more of a looking trying to debt finance that. With some of our facilities, debt financing is a more opportune way of not having $6 million in a reserve from the taxpayer, and way of trying to pay for that to move things forward and then be able to pay it off over a 50-year period. I look at who's benefiting from that renovation. Is it the current taxpayer? Because the current taxpayer, you're taxing them and putting it into reserves, versus the future taxpayer, which is the where long-term debt comes into play, and the future taxpayer is impacted by that future payments.
Supplemental?
I do understand that, but I guess I'm more of a hybrid person. If we know it's coming, we should put a little bit away for things, so it's not such a big hit. Because you don't know what interest rates are gonna be down the line.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no further questions, recommendation reads as follows. That council receives the budget policy report and that council approves the budget policy as presented. Moved by Deputy Warden Orr. Is there a seconder? Councilor McDermott? Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, that's carried. I believe Councilor Egan's frozen or not.
I voted against.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item 8.3.3, 2027 budget preliminary discussion. Great, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thanks, Warden Trinkowski. We just have a brief presentation slide deck that we're going to provide to council. So I'm pleased to present the 2027 preliminary discussion report for information. This is the first step in the 2027 budget. Provides an early look to for the county on the base pressures, levy impacts, and the additional considerations submitted by divisions and departments. Today's presentation provides council an early estimate of the 2027 pressures based on departmental submissions, contract obligations, and known cost drivers. This allows council to understand the scale of the base budget and begin considering discretionary items before the full draft to be brought back in December. The preliminary 2027 base budget shows an increase of just over $2.21 million, or 7.98%, bringing the proposed levy to just under $30 million. The base budget maintains all existing service levels. There are no program, no service expansions, and no staff included in this stage. What is driving the 7.98 base increase? First off is the inflationary and contractual pressures. That amounts to about $724,000 of the total increase, or 2.61%. This includes collective agreement adjustments, non-union driven movements and cost of living increases, as well as a winter maintenance 5-year average income component increase of about $350,000 to the winter maintenance program for 2027. The next area is asset management and capital financing. This is an increase of about $770,000 or 2.78%. This increases are adding contributions to the capital reserve, construction inflation, as well as debt repayment. The third item is the legislative and regulatory requirements. This impact is the $106,000, which is representative of the OMPF reduction from the 2026 to 2027, about $106,000, representing 0.38%. And the last item is the cost shared service areas. And cost shared service areas including long-term care, Spruce Lodge, social services, and here on Perth Public Health. The cost apportionment related to these areas are based on weighted assessment of the partners involved, and Perth County's share for 2027 will be 51.3%. That is essentially brings us to the base budget. And as I noted, what is not included is no new staffing, no service level enhancements, and any type of growth related projects. The next area is what has been provided by staff as additional considerations. Is again, what I mentioned is the base pressures as winter maintenance, the winter maintenance reserve is at zero. Again, collective agreement negotiations are ongoing. Cost of living has been set approximately about 2%. And as mentioned, the OMPF for Perth County will be eliminated by 2030. So 2027 additional considerations. Department submitted 9 additional considerations totaling $359,400. If council chose to include all these items, an estimated levy impact would be an increase of about 0.45%, bringing the total increase to 8.43%. And the levy would just be over approximately just over $30 million. Items provided, one project related to the archives, related to Huron Tract Treaty Exhibit. This has no impact to the levy, as it is recommended by staff to be funded from the Archives General Reserve, which approximately has $58,000 in it. The next item is economic development, $20,000 to expand marketing and tourism promotions. The third area is paramedic services, which has a few different items within the report if you look at the details. But it relates to equipment, training, analytical software, controlled substances, and implementation, approximately about $180,000. Finance has indicated a solution to AP digitization of accounts payables. And the last item it has been identified is to an additional mechanic within Public Works fleet. But this again has no impact to the levy, as it's absorbed in the equipment rates for that service. The base budget reflects the estimated of maintaining existing service under the current economic and legislative conditions. The additional considerations are for council to deliberate over and determine if they should be moved forward to the budget process and include within the budget discussions in December. The report is intended to support early awareness. The levy impact will continue to evolve as assessment data and updated and council provides direction accordingly. The preliminary budget continues to align again with the county strategic priorities. The next steps is staff will continue refining the budget through the summer and the fall. The full draft budget will be presented to council in December of 2026. And again, looking to figure out from council any of the discretionary items to be considered. And along with that, any details of those additional considerations, staff are here to be able to answer questions on any of those items. So if there's any questions on the report, I'd be happy to answer.
Right, thanks, Corey. Questions from colleagues. We'll start a speakers list with Councillor Wilhelm and then Councillor Caseberg.
Yes, thank you. Corey, thanks for the report, but I'm very disappointed that we're looking at almost 8%, at least an 8% increase by the time this is done. I don't believe we can continue with those large increases year over year. We have to get it reduced down. You know, 3 or 4% would be acceptable, but continuing year after year at 8% or higher is not sustainable for our ratepayers.
Thanks, Councillor Wilhelm. Councillor Caseberg, next, please.
Thank you. Certainly, these are challenging economic times. As I often explain to those who present to me and say, why aren't we sticking with the inflation rate that we see in society? Municipalities do not buy the same basket of goods as household inflation rate is based on. We have a range of services and contracts which are substantially higher, typically in terms of what we're paying for. And so it would be interesting, certainly, to see what a municipal sector inflation rate looks like. I think we're kind of seeing that in this budget and in recent budgets as well. You know, I'm interested in looking at these additional considerations, and I want to ask, my first question is, how many of these do we believe are ongoing commitments versus one-off commitments in the additional consideration?
So through the word to Councillor Caseberg, the item represented the exhibit is a one-time item, a reason for utilization of reserve, as it is not an ongoing cost. One of the main reasons why we would utilize a reserve versus impacting the levy. The other items on that list would be ongoing type of items.
If I might, so for example, it says fit test machine. That almost sounds like a capital item in its loose, simple explanation. But you're saying that every year we'll be paying $62,000 for a fit test machine. Is that my understanding?
Through the word, I think there's 2 components of that. There would be an ongoing component as well as a capital component. And Mike Adair, Chief Adair, would be able to answer the breakdown of those components.
Okay, we might yet ask him to do that if I might want more.
Yes.
And then actually I have 2 more. The first one is the $80,000 from Ministry of Health implementation of controlled substances. This almost sounds like it's a mandatory expense that the Ministry of Health has established something that we have to comply with. Can someone confirm whether that is just a standard of care that the Ministry of Health expects us to fund?
Mike, Chief Adair could probably answer that question as well.
Okay, so we'll call on him next, Mike. And then one last question. Can you give me, at this point, the total scope of our marketing and tours and promotion through advertising budget? And we're proposing to increase it by 20,000, and I'd like to know what we're currently paying for that.
The advertising budget currently is sitting at about 109,000.
This is a shy of 20% increase.
Correct.
I see.
What was the number I didn't hear?
109,000.
109.
Okay.
If it's all right, Warden, could we hear from Chief Adair with regard?
Yeah, I was gonna ask next if Chief Adair was in a position to provide some additional information.
I am.
If you are, yeah, you come.
No, I am. I'm just wondering if I.
You can come to the table, it's fine. We have lots of chairs, lots of space.
Yeah, it's just easier to see faces than to talk to your map. So, thank you, Mr. Warden. to my left there. So I'll go through the two items that were brought up. The first one being the Ministry of Health implementation of controlled substances, including training staff. So there's a couple of things to be aware of this. This is something I wanted to bring to council so that we can have this discussion and make a decision in the upcoming budget season. This is going to be an auxiliary directive, so it's not mandatory from the province. But what they're doing is we're going to have the possibility to expand the tools in our toolkit to provide pain control as well as sedation. So let me just talk about both of those just really at a high level. So first of all, if say you have a fracture or something like that in a rural area and we have to drive down the bumpy road to a hospital, and it's going to be a half-hour transport. Should the province approve what we think that they're going to be approving in the new year, we would and we implement this, we would be able to provide that person with pain control, so it's more comfortable and more humane to get from point A to point B, and that's a discussion that we can have here in council, whether we implement that or not. The other one is for seizures or for persons that are severely agitated. So in those high risk calls where somebody might be severely agitated and instead of the police managing the person alone and restraining them, we may be able to use some pharmacokinetics. We'll be able to use the medication to help sedate that person. Or if they're having a long seizure, we can stop the seizure. So because those are being added to the toolkits, it's a conversation that I feel is necessary to bring back to council, which is why it's sitting here. Part of this cost is a one-time training cost. So out of that $80,000, roughly around 60,000, I understand we're, in council right now, I don't have the exact number, but around $60,000 would be the upfront cost. And then the remainder of that, the 20,000 would be to make sure that we have the systems in place. And because it's a controlled substance, we're ready to launch because the province has been talking about this for the last 5 years. So we actually have the capital infrastructure in place because of a variety of different reasons, including our community paramedic program, which is like safes to keep the medication safe and those types of things. So we have a lot of the infrastructure in place, but we would need to do that initial purchase of medication and then the ongoing and an initial training and then the ongoing medication. So that's what we'd be looking at should we choose to move forward with that. Part two of that was the fit testing machine. So we have a shared model where we're hoping to purchase fit testing machines across several different services. So we would own one of the fit testing machines, but we would have access to 4. So instead of having 2 per service, we would be sharing 1 per service and kind of move them around the province where they need to go. And that would be absolutely a capital ask. So that's just an additional to put into our capital plan and ask. And that would be something that's replaced every 5 to 7 years. So that would be broken down over that, and I'm sure that finance can speak to that, how that would work in terms of the money. Yeah, so pass it back to you, Warden.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Councillor Kasenberg, you have all the information you need there, all right? Councillor Duncan, you're next on the speakers list.
Yeah, it's through you, Warden, to the finance department. I see you had a growth number up there for last year. Do you expect the growth number to be higher, lower this year?
It's still early on in relation to what growth might look like for 2027. But estimates, I would say, would be between 1% to 2%. So out of the 7.98%, 1% to 2% would be covered by that growth. Thank you.
So Corey, if the numbers hold true, then an 8% levy increase could potentially be reduced to
6 to 7%
levy. 6 to 7, yeah. Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Counselor Smith?
Yes, thank you through you, Warden. I really agree with Counselor Wilhelm. At 8%. It's astonishing. We need to continue to pressure the province and the feds. Since 1998, they've been downloading, obviously the paramedics, social services, so. Yeah, we gotta continue to pressure. My question goes to the Public Works Department, and without getting into the weeds, the answer later, but looking at hiring another mechanic through the, doesn't affect the levy. But one of the comments in the report was we have one or two that possibly will retire. And we want to get ready for that. Does that mean that right now we have two? Does that mean going forward, we're gonna continue to have three mechanics on staff? Going forward, that's, again, whether that's answered now or later, just curious about that one.
Through the warden to Counselor Smith's question, no, the couple would go back to two after retirement. It's just that knowledge transfer from those two approaching retirement, that we have that in place, especially during the winter season, to have somebody in that place to deal with that contingency. Deputy Warden, or go ahead, please.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are missing in my opinion. Have we got a request from the Agri-Food Discovery Center? We did give to them last year, just wondering if they're gonna come back. I'm also wondering where we ended up with the hogweed. Just can't remember what happened in the end. And then my third question is, I personally am not happy with how the stewardship program is run, and I would like to see us reevaluate that, and I think we could work closer with our conservation authorities and save ourselves some money there. Those are my comments.
So this does not include any impact of the Agri Science Center.
Okay.
As well as hogweed, was the council to provide 25,000 somewhat towards that program in 2026. There is no $25,000 included in the 27 budget. And as for the stewardship program, how it's run is kind of a discussion for council.
Okay, you. Anyone else? Counselor Duncan?
Your warden, just one more question. One of the discretionary items here, the deployment and station location analytics software. Does this relate back to the recent report we had about deployment of our resources? Sure, Chief Adair can probably answer that for me.
So I was just looking at a text from deputy, my deputy on Madaz line, so just ask the question. Maybe you please ask the question again.
Yeah, so the deployment and station location analytics software, does that relate back to the recent report we had back about?
So that, yeah, sure, happy to answer that question, please answer it. We are doing, so this year we're doing our master planning, and we are procuring or working with many health services in partnership also with Child Kent, so that we can do some cost sharing, make the money a little bit lower. So we've started our journey of looking at where to put stations and planning for the future, so we can provide some accurate information down the road. And what that particular case is, if we decide that we like it after the first 12 months of using this software, if that's something that is very useful for us to continue to measure our performance and how we move forward, then that would come at a cost. It's above and beyond what Medivy offers. It's not an enterprise solution at this point in any event. If it is in the future, then we can re-look at it, but it is something that we're buying into for a one-time cost. And then I put that there so that we can have a conversation as we move forward in the budget process, if we're finding that it is going to be a useful tool for us to continue to evaluate our performance and those types of things as we move forward. Does that answer the question, or do I?
Yeah, no, I think I understand what you're using for. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so really, if you think of it, that commitment will start this year in July and next year in July, like around that period of time. And then if we want to renew it, I need to have something in the budget to renew it for one more year.
Councillor Kingstonberg, go ahead.
Sorry, round two. So, there's two efforts that I see, maybe even a third, that relates to implementation of software or technologies across the proposed additional considerations. And my question is, typically, the first year might be a difficult one, but are we anticipating some release of staff time because of greater efficiencies in the implementation of this software?
So in terms of like, I guess basically paramedic services for the warden, in terms of this particular software, the value is instead of, to answer your question, instead of like, so right now, if we think we're going to change the way we move ambulances around, and then we look at the data, and we do have a product that basically helps us with business decisions. But we can try things without actually having to try them. So then we can say, well, what if we added more population? What if we move the standby over here? What would our call capture be like? So at the click of a button, we can actually look at that without having to run a trial for like a month or 2 months to see what's happening. And that so it increases the speed of our iterations of trials. So I think there's value in that to help with our decision making. And it's very specific. The software that I'm talking about is very specific to being able to forecast and do those types of things. I'm also cautious because there's a lot of innovation happening in the world right now in AI, where I think that this software is not, like, I don't know where it's going to be in 2 years. I don't know where, some of the solutions in terms of like paramedic services, where our patient care records. Right now, we're sort of on the cusp of like new programming coming out and AI, not just for our own use, but AI for software developer developing better programs. And so I wouldn't want to buy into anything. That's why it's a 1 year sort of commitment that we have, and then potential of expanding for 1 year so that we can evaluate how we're performing. But depending where we are in the master plan and what we need to evaluate, I feel that I'll have a better perspective later on in the budget process if we need to extend that for paramedic services, that $25,000 or not. So in the future, if we feel that we're doing well and we don't need to, then we can always end it. And if we feel that we need to move forward, I can certainly bring back the reasons why.
Same question for Mr. Bridges
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
finance division.
Through the warden, to Councilor Kingston's question. The component of accounts payable digitization will shift resources away from data entry type of commitments to more analytics within the finance division, where we're spending more time on the data entry. We'll be able to provide on analytics in their central areas of expertise and provide more analytics within finance.
Sorry, Ward, which means what to the organization or council?
Some more information related to how the organization is performing, and how we can then provide more say policy type of items for council to indicate related to one example is reserve levels. Some more time to be able to spend on reserve level components to see where we need to be and what's the gap that Perth County is seeing.
So essentially, Corey, less time punching numbers in on the keyboard, doing, I'll say, regular administrative duties and having that digitized so that employee time can be spent doing management and strategic work. Is that correct?
Analytics of the organization, the financial health component.
Okay, so less rowing, more steering of the boat. Thank you. Anyone else? Deputy Warden Moore, go ahead, please.
Just regarding public works and winter maintenance, like we wiped that reserve now. I'm concerned about future winters. How much are we putting away?
So this component that we provided in this estimate is to try to get a surplus of maybe $200,000 to be returned into the reserve. What was provided previously on Q1 for Perth County is that with what harsh winters we've seen, and actually the first quarter was pretty harsh for Perth County in 2026. We're maintaining to be hopefully on budget by the end of the year. Adding another additional amount, it's 350,000, will be hopefully in a position to again, even more money to go into the reserve if we're back to kind of a normal 5-year average.
Councillor Kasenberg, go ahead.
Sorry to be past Warden Trentowski. So have we given any consideration to the possibility that with regards to the winter reserve, we establish dedicated percent or something like that for trying to replenish that reserve, given the challenge of having a zero reserve at this point, of trying to do it through the core budget as opposed to just making it explicit to the taxpayers of the county that this is what we're doing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Through the word to Councillor Kasenberg's question, the only situation is again, if it was another harsh winter, we're going to be eating that dedicated percentage. So what we're trying to do is develop that within the operational needs of the corporation, so that we can get into a year that is a lighter winter and be in a position to provide council a report back that the surplus is there to be able to retain it in the reserve.
Anything further? No.
With respect, there's a lot of the word hope, I think, in that comment, which leaves me vaguely uncomfortable for the future.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Higgins, do you have any questions? Checking in? No questions? Okay. I guess if I might ask a question or two, on the shared services, I just wanted to get any comments or input from our serving committee members, like I'm thinking about situations at Spruce Lodge or the health unit in particular. And I guess I would have questions for the social services, the city of Stratford, on what their drivers are in terms of what their cost pressures are. Corey's mentioned the cost pressures specific to the county, but I'm curious to learn more about the cost pressures specific to the shared services that we participate in. I don't know if councillors are in a position to comment, to Councillor Smith.
Sure, thanks. We were working through for Spruce Lodge. Came a long way since the dreaded COVID. We're trying to get our reserves replenished, having to pay for the extra staffing over that time. Obviously, we do have the aging infrastructure at the lodge, but staff has been doing a great job of keeping that up. The province has helped out with a grant that comes in. We're sitting at 97% occupancy at this point, Sue.
It's close to 100.
Okay, thank you. Close to 100. So yeah, again, as I said, come a long way since the C word. So staffing is good. So lodge is in pretty decent shape in my opinion.
Good, thank you. Councillor Kasenberg, do you have anything from the health unit that you might be able to provide us with?
I think the health unit is continuing to live with the constraints imposed by the province in terms of its funding stream, right? The province has limited grant increases to the health unit to 1%. And so I think, I mean, my read, and Bob, tell me if I'm wrong, is that largely the health unit is trying to live within that. That has provoked some difficult decisions, no question, on the part of the health unit, including adjustments, potentially in staffing and so forth, but nevertheless, we're only seeing a 1% change from them, which is reflective of essentially the provincial mandate of 1% change.
Thank you, Councillor Wilhelm, go ahead.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Kasenberg that the health units, the staff have done a very good job of managing increases, and yes, they are looking at reducing FTEs, and it's all part of keeping within that 1% budget.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Warden North, go ahead.
This afternoon, we have MSSC, and one of my questions will be to social services. Without being too political, I'm very concerned about the city of Stratford being the driver when they're going to apply for grants on all of our behalf. Because I do think with them suing the province for strong mayor powers that it hasn't put everybody in the strongest light. So I have some concerns going forward if they are going to be writing the grants on our behalf. Maybe there's something that we have to take over. I'm gonna direct that to social services.
Yeah, we do have a shared services quarterly meeting coming up later today, so that will be the platform through which we can express those same comments. Any other questions from colleagues? See any? Corey, I guess I have one more question. It's a general question. Is there, like Councillor Smith touched on it a little bit about funding from federal and provincial sources, is there anything more we can do to, I guess, inquire with the province or find out from the province if there's any more support that they can lend in these different areas? I recognizing that the province already does do a fair bit in that regard, and just thought of leaving no stone unturned comes to mind here, so.
Yeah, through the warden, to the warden, the avenues of the federal and provincial government, we can just have those conversations with those parties to see if there's anything that we as staff are missing. They do provide, significant funding within Canada Community Building Fund, the Ontario Infrastructure Fund to support infrastructure. The component in the areas that the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, that the concept was to help with subsidization of farm discount or the ratio reduction, and they lost sight of what that funding was intended for Port County. It was heavily driven by farmland. So it's the reason why we want to go to AMO to talk to the province related to that funding component.
Okay, thank you. I guess one final question for you, and it's another general question. Like typically when we talk to federal and provincial government, one of the answers or one of the comments that comes back is from them is at the local level, stop funding things that we at either provincial or federal level aren't willing to put money forward. So is there anything in our budget, like in these additional considerations, is there anything there where it's listed or proposed to spend money on that the province or federal government isn't already spending money on originally? Like, are we going beyond the limits or beyond the borders of what level of service provincial and federal government typically would participate in, either currently or in the past?
Nothing that we have provided that there are, again, that's how paramedic services has gone for since I've been working here at the county.
Okay. And maybe just a follow up, is it a hard number 50% or is it up to
It's the fine line of that budget, because if you don't spend the money that you budgeted for, that 50%, they want the money back. But if you overspend on that money, you're not getting additional provincial funding. So in the service area, that is the one fine tooth comb where we need to be very on key with our budgeting to maximize the provincial grants that we do receive in that program.
Okay, thank you. All right, colleagues, any further questions or comments? Good discussion here, and lots of important information shared back and forth, so thank you to staff and to Corey for preparing this and helping get the 2027 budget discussion started. All right, resolution reads as follows. Okay, maybe one other thing before I read the resolution. On the discretionary items, council at either now or at any time can refer discretionary items to be included in the draft 2027 budget. So we have the list today. That list still exists in the future should we wish to bring these back at any time, and I'm sure we will eventually, but later in the fall. But between now and the fall, we have the ability to bring these items back at any time. Just want council to be clear about that. So the first recommendation is that council receives the 2027 budget preliminary discussion report for information. So moved by Councillor McDermott, seconded by Councillor Wilhelm. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Referral motion can be made now or at any time. Second before. I see any referral motions being brought forward at this time, so we will carry on with our next item. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Moving to item 8.3.4, the tree injury bylaw, final draft update. We will have Stephen, our executive director for legal and corporate services, lead us on this report. Okay, welcome back, Stephen. Before Stephen begins, similar to the approach we took last time on this topic, we do have a recommendation for council's consideration. If they so choose, that council waive solicitor client privilege for the tree injury bylaw item. A waiver of this solicitor client privilege would allow for staff to openly discuss any details of a legal nature without council having to move into a closed session to do so. So I'll read the resolution and see if there's any support for that. Recommendation is that the council waive solicitor client privilege for the tree injury bylaw item. So moved by Councillor Kasenberg, seconded by Deputy Warden Moore. Could you show Councillor Agates back on the screen, please? Okay, so we have a mover and seconder on the waiver recommendation. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, now we can go back to presentation mode, and Stephen, the floor is yours.
And again, Warden, Council. Before you is a almost finalized version of the tree injury bylaw. The bylaw requires your input on two items. Those two items are highlighted in red. And in blue are items that were somewhat contentious, and they're flagged for your attention as well. And I'm going to walk you through those so that you can see how those have been framed in the context of the bylaw. The remaining items that you have already voted on, like for example, certificate of compliance, the notice of intent process and the appeal process associated with that, they're already into the bylaw. So moving on to the definition. So the plan is, I'll walk you through the entire bylaw. I will show you exactly where the changes have been made. And then we'll circle back to a potential discussion on the two definitions. So the two items that will need to be decided on are the definition of a tree plantation for the purpose of potentially exempting that plantation, if that is what council wants to do. And then the second item that we'll discuss is potentially the quantum of the appeal fee that will be associated with the appeal process that is now in place. So going through the bylaw, section 2 is the definition. The purpose is already there. So I'm going to page 5 of the bylaw. So page 5 is the tree plantation. It will be discussed later. There are 3 options for your consideration. But I'll set that aside for a moment and just move on to the windbreak. So this is the windbreak definition. Again, windbreak means a linear treed area of any size consisting of 1 to 3 rows of planted trees with a separation of at least 20 meters from the ecological boundary of any woodland, including 1 to 3 rows of planted trees which lawfully existed prior to the enactment of this bylaw, with a separation of at least 20 meters from the ecological boundary of any woodland. Just for greater clarity, that captures any future windbreaks that will be planted and any past or grandfathered breaks that people would want to potentially remove. The other contentious item, or the other item that was discussed, was the boundary definition, and council had directed us to come back with a definition of the boundary. So we're going to section 2, subsection 2. For the purposes of this bylaw, the boundary of a woodland shall be defined by the ecological limit of the woodland and not by the property boundaries. For greater clarity, in an area along the edge of a field used to plant crops immediately adjacent to a woodland, the ecological limit will be determined by the tillage mark wherever possible. And we're mindful here that in some instances, if the field is left fallow, there is no tillage mark. So we want to make sure that that is captured as well. So that is the definition that's proposed for the boundary of the woodlands. Moving forward, these are the general, again, we've discussed all of this before. There is a general prohibition and then there are exceptions. There is the general cut, subsection 1 of section 4. There is the silvicultural prescription, which is subsection 2. And then the subsection 3, it is the diameter cut for the logging operation. They remain the same. Moving forward to section 5 now, which are the exemptions. At the very end of the section, so we have here the injuring and destruction of trees forming a windbreak. This is the exemption for the windbreak. Within that exemption, we are also including the tree plantation or a tree nursery stock, provided that any clearing or removal of trees does not contravene any other applicable laws affecting conservation, drainage, or environmental protection requirements. And then for greater clarity, again, windbreak and tree plantations are defined in section 2, subsection 1 of this bylaw. We haven't provided a definition of tree nursery stock specifically because in the previous bylaw, we already had this very similar language. Tree nursery stock, there were never any issues with it. So the proposal is just to keep it simple and just keep it there. So if council decides to proceed with the tree plantation exemption or not, this will be just the area, the section that will effectively be affected by it. But again, I'll speak more to that when we discuss the tree plantation piece. The notice of intent and the certificates are already in the agreement. Last time there was some discussions along the side. So we're looking at page 10 of the agreement, sorry, of the bylaw. I apologize for that. Page 10 of the bylaw, subsection 7. These are essentially the notice requirements and the notice provisions in terms of if, for example, someone is served with an email or in person, they will be deemed to have been served the day of service. If it's by mail, the 5th day of the mailing. If it's by a courier, the 3rd business day, and so forth. So we've included that in. again, for clarity in terms of avoiding any doubt as to when service has been effectuated. Moving forward, the appeals already in, the appeal process is already in. The appeal officer also is granted the powers to inspect if it's needed. The notice of appeal decision is section 9. Section 10 is the stop work order, and the work order, these are from the previous bylaw. There is no change there. Let's see. The keep going service of the order, again, kept from the previous bylaw. Section 13 now is the other offenses, and if you remember, the drainage has been included here as well, so it's all tied up in one place. Penalties, section 14, and then enforcement. So this is another section 15, subsection 3, another very important provision which council has directed us to include. So in carrying out inspections, investigations, and enforcement activities under this bylaw, an officer or an appeal officer will, where practicable in the circumstances, have regard to applicable municipal standard operating procedures and provincial requirements respecting animal health and welfare, agriculture, biosecurity, the protection of agricultural products and food safety. So that's where that is included. Moving on to the end. So there are some administrative, here again, the short title of the bylaw, the administration, and then on the screen, you will see the schedules, and I apologize that they weren't provided in print, but they are here on the screen. So the Schedule A remains the same. The black locust that was discussed last time has moved to the invasive species schedule. So again, these are the species that can be cut into diameters or circumferences associated with each of the species. As discussed last time, so this is the schedule on invasive species. Again, the schedule identifies invasive species which can be cut or removed without a compliance certificate issued under the bylaw on the territory of the county. The list of the invasive species is included here. So there are 5 currently invasive species. And again, subsection 3, in the spirit of trying to encourage the communication between land residents and the county, to avoid any enforcement actions, property owners are encouraged but not obligated to contact the county's officer to facilitate the identification of species and documentation of species if needed, just to make sure that before they cut them that these are in fact one of these 5 species that have been included in the invasive species schedule. The stop work order is something that the bylaw previously contained as well. We have included the notice of intent now, so this is what our notice of intent looks like. The challenge, if you wish, with including all of these documents is that if there's ever need to amend these documents, we'll have to come back to you so that you can see the amendment of the documents. But at the same time, for the benefit of the residents, it's worth having everything in one place so that when they take a bylaw, they see that everything that they need for their activity is there. So and talking about that as well, the communication piece now with the new website being developed is also something that was discussed in the report and will be worked with our communications officer to be appropriately communicated with the community. Going forward, so the appeal form, again, this is the notice of appeal form, notice of intent. Again, it's very simple, 1-page form, reasons for the appeal, and then it goes to the appeal officer. These are samples of what the compliance certificates would look like. Again, these compliance certificates now would close off all the notices of intent processes. So you file a notice of intent, and before you are able to undertake any of the activities, then you'll have to receive the compliance certificate, unless, of course, you are exempted by the proposed activity falls within the exemptions of the bylaw. So that is the compliance certificate. We also have a non-compliance certificate. So that is what it's going to look like. Again, just a 1-page. So effectively, these compliance or non-compliance certificates will be the ones that will be appealed, peer reviewed, if you wish, by another registered professional forester to make sure that the decision is objective and equitable. We have, so this is again highlighted in red. This is the final schedule, the notice of appeal, the applicable fee payable to the county for the filing of the notice of appeal shall be, and then an amount that the council would decide today is amended from time to time. A potential, an addition to this section could be, and this is something that again, can be discussed. Again, I have some additional language and I'll read it for your benefit here. So for greater clarity, the appeal filing fee prescribed by this bylaw covers only the administrative process of the appeal and does not include any costs associated with the preparation, compilation, reproduction, collection, or submission of any documents, records, data, studies, or other relevant materials considered appropriate in connection with the appeal. All such costs shall be the sole responsibility and shall be borne by the appellant. If council wants to go with an appeal fee, that will be potentially something that council will want to consider as an additional clarification, just to make sure that the fee is just for the purposes of processing the appeal and not for covering any documents or materials that need to be prepared by the appellant. And with that, that is again the overview of the bylaw. I would take you to the definition for a tree plantation. So we have went back after last session, after our last council session, to consider the tree plantation. And in my report, a copy of which is provided to you in paper, there is some information that is very important. So we have looked at what other counties have done with respect to tree plantations, and nobody has defined a tree plantation except fruit and nut orchards and Christmas tree plantations, which were captured by the Forestry Act. So these are the Forestry Act definitions or language that is there that others have potentially considered and have defined. The challenge with the tree plantation piece is that back in the 70s and the 80s, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry entered into agreements with private landowners to artificially plant trees. They entered into these 10-year agreements, ensuring that the trees will grow. And then subsequently, once they're grown, that they would be captured potentially by the Woodland or by the Forestry Act and would therefore be protected. Therefore, we need to ensure that regardless of the choice of council today, that any definition that we have does not contravene the Forestry Act and specifically the woodland definition, because we want to avoid a situation where there is a plantation in place that is left unattended, for example, and it's become a woodland already. And that's why it is important to consider the inclusion of the language actively and continuously managed. So in order for a plantation to be considered a plantation, if council does want to go with including an exemption for tree plantation, then that will be the recommendation to have the plantations be actively and continuously managed. The three options that are presented before you. So option number one is you have no definition of tree plantation. That is an option. But with respect to the definitions themselves, so the very first definition, again, a wooded area with intentionally planted or seeded trees in a predetermined pattern or rows for commercial forestry purposes, including harvesting, and which is actively and continuously managed in keeping with the original purpose of planting or seeding. And then for greater clarity, a plantation is not a naturally evolved woodland. So as you can see, this is a very, very broad definition. Similarly to the windbreaks, it has no area limit and potentially could be seen as infringing on, and I'm mindful here when I'm saying that, could be seen as infringing on the definition of a woodland in certain circumstances. The second definition that is proposed, and I'll direct your attention before I read out that definition, I'll direct your attention to, in my reports, they are samples of what others have done. Again, nobody has defined a tree plantation. But if you go to Simcoe at the very end, the county of Simcoe, or their Christmas tree plantation, they've included, so they're saying Christmas tree plantation, so woodlands, does not include a cultivated fruit or nut orchard or a plantation established for the purpose of producing Christmas trees, unless the said plantation has not been managed for the intended purpose for a period of 15 years. So there is a period of 15 years in terms of a time constraint within which there is some leeway for property owners to not actively maintain it, but if it needs to be maintained within that parameters. If you, in our definition, we've included 10 years. The purpose of the 10 years is because within 10 years, we will have new satellite imagery that can tell us whether this plantation has indeed been actively managed or not, so that the determination can be made. So there is some logic behind the proposed language here. So a tree plantation, the second definition is tree plantation means an artificially reforested area established by planting or direct seeding for commercial purposes and which is actively and continuously managed in keeping with the original purpose of planting or seeding. So until here, it's essentially very close to the first definition. And then a tree plantation must have been tended for the production of trees within the last 10 years. If the area has not been tended as a plantation within the last 10 years and meets the stocking requirements of section 2(1) HH, which is woodlands, here it is at the bottom of the screen, it is considered woodland. For greater clarity, a tree plantation is not a naturally evolved woodland. So that is that is the proposed option for a tree plantation, the second option. And the third option is actually the one that limits the tree plantation up to a hectare. So a tree plantation means an artificially reforested area established by planting or direct seeding less than 1 hectare. If the plantation is at least 1 hectare or more in area and supports a tree density of planted and naturally regenerated trees of species listed in Schedule A, that meets the density standard outlined in the definition of woodlands. The tree plantation is considered a woodland. And again, the idea here with by adding the Schedule A is we want to make sure that it is only the trees that are in Schedule A, because if these are invasive species, then they wouldn't be, they could be cut down. So we just want to make that distinction there. And I would suggest, so this is, again, one of the issues that you will have to decide on today, and the other issue being the quantum of the appeal. And with that, my presentation concludes.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Just waiting for Councillor Agates to come back onto the screen. There we go. All right, colleagues, questions for Stefan on this latest report? Start speakers list with Councillor McDermott, and I believe Councillor Agates. Do you have your hand up, Rona? No, okay, sorry, it's the glare on the screen. Okay, Councillor McDermott, go ahead.
Okay, I would like definition 1 for tree plantation, but I would add about 3 words. Tree plantation means a wooded area with intentionally planted or seeded trees as a crop, so that we would be very certain that what somebody is doing is they're planting the trees for crop. I realize you have for commercial forestry purposes, but it would delineate exactly what somebody is doing.
Through the warden, I have no objection to the addition of that word. The intent is, again, to try to, so nobody's doing this, we're the pioneers trying to set this. We are also mindful of the fact that this may be tested in court. We don't want to go there, of course. We want to make sure that the more clarity we provide, the better. If that improves the definition and that is amenable to council, I have no objections to that. Again, if we have to talk about strictly ensuring that there is absolutely no doubt that this cannot be assailable in court, I would say that the definition 3 under a hectare is the definition that it should potentially be considered. But again, council is free to make that decision.
And I would think too, you could also put in that tree plantations only exist from the day that this becomes law, so that the trees that were planted before by the government or whoever else, that they're not included in this, they're outside. This only takes effect when it legally takes effect. Anything that existed before that date is not covered by it. If you were worried about losing plantations or trees that have been planted by the government before.
What you're saying, Councillor McDermott, the definition would not be retroactive. Going backwards, it would only be going forwards.
Yeah.
Councillor Casenberg, go ahead, please.
I'm not sure of the implications of the non-retroactive thing. I'm going to ask staff to help me understand what the possible implications of that are.
Sure, through the warden. So with the current definition, the challenge is that if there is a plantation and the plantation has no limit, so in terms of area, and so theoretically, that could be considered woodland. The plantation itself could be considered woodland. So right now, pending council's decision, we are creating a carve out from the definition of woodland. Of the provincial definition of woodland is what we're trying to do here, and or distinguish between the two to make sure that what council is seeking to achieve is actually achievable. The distinction between going back in time as opposed to going forward in time does limit somewhat the liability that a municipality may have. I don't anticipate that liability would be, again, I personally cannot attest to the value of the trees that will be mowed down or be affected by by the potential changes. But if we try to limit it only going forward, and then if they are very strict requirements for commercial purposes, for active and continuously managed plantations, for identifying it as a crop, if you wish, that may help potentially guide the courts down the line if this is ever tested in court. But it doesn't insulate us completely to say, okay, our bylaw is unassailable. That, I don't know if that answers the case of this question.
Deep in thought. Councillor Duncan, go ahead.
I think like Stefan has suggested, I think the more clarity that's in the definition, the better. So I would agree with both of the additions that Councillor McDermott has suggested, and agree with using definition 1 as our definition.
Option A. Option A. Okay. Any more questions or comments on the definitions discussion? I'll go to Deputy Warden Orr and then Councillor Kasenberg.
Depending when this comes to vote, I agree with option number 1 as well, but I do like just as a crop added. I don't want to get into the weeds of what happened in the past, grandfathering and all of that. I think this is clear enough.
Through the warden, if I may, to answer as well, Councillor Kasenberg's question. If we are talking about the bylaw being potentially challenged, one outcome that may come of it is that the courts will strike out the definition, and the definition will no longer apply. That will be an outcome, a concrete outcome that may happen, saying that the council has acted outside of its powers to try to limit legislation that is created by the province to define woodland. So that is a potential outcome that can happen, and that is why I'm hesitant in terms of embracing from a legal standpoint definition number 1. But again, I understand our practical reality needs. I understand what our community wants, and we want to make sure that we are trying to accommodate the legal reality to the extent that we can in order to allow for that medium where the interests of the community are advanced. So, and at the same time, we are also mindful, and council should be mindful, that if this is ever tested, and it may be tested, we will be spending money in court to defend it and justifying it, which.
Councillor Kasenberg, go ahead.
So I'm picking up on a piece here that interests me, and that option 1 seems somewhat silent about. It's kind of there, but it's kind of not there. And that is the issue of woodland and 1 hectare, right? So my understanding is that the provincial standard around woodland is 1 hectare.
Yeah.
And so we're saying, doesn't matter how big, like we're sort of blind to how big it is. We're just saying, as long as the intent was that it's to be used for crop purposes, to borrow Councillor McDermott's thinking, it's not a woodland. It's not, honestly, it's not. And my concern is that the province has said woodland looks like this. It's this size. There's a size element amongst other things. Now, maybe I'm getting caught in the weeds here, or in the trees, maybe more accurately. But I find myself concerned that we're trying to stipulate essentially a new definition of woodland that is without size or constraint, that the province has applied the size restrict. So there's where my worry sits.
Through the warden, the definition of woodlands does involve area and density of trees combined. So that is one. Well, this will be one of the arguments if we have to defend this, is that the tree plantation itself may not limit and may not define the area. But at the same time, if the landowners are careful with respect to the density of trees and how that tree plantation is managed, that second piece may be something that will completely exonerate them from any liability or anything that is associated with this massive change. And again, I think everyone is aware that, again, we are at the forefront. And this was one of the caveats that I had in the beginning when I was presenting to council, is we understand what everybody else is doing, but we have our own issues too that we want to address. And we appreciate that, yes, there are 10 definitions of different municipalities, and nobody has defined the tree plantation. But the argument again would be is that the tree plantation itself does not infringe on the definition of woodlands because of these various elements, which would be commercial forestry and active and continuous management. Whether these arguments would be accepted by the courts, I cannot guarantee it. Similarly to the windbreaks, it would be decided on the balance of probabilities, and I cannot guarantee that we will be successful. But it is worth considering distinguishing plantations from woodlands, and the more we're able to distinguish them, whether it's based on continuous use or forestry, the better chances they are to ensure that the courts potentially interpret it. But again, it is going to be difficult to provide you with a guarantee and say that this is unsafe.
Councillor Smith, go ahead.
Thanks for the warden. Yeah, I agree, option A with the addition of the as a crop. If we put the definition in, the 9 out of the 10, or all 10, do not define tree plantation.
None of them define.
And then your comment saying we are unique, however, why not include it? Would that help our situation, or would it make it worse to our community? Just helping with that one, if we do not include the definition, we haven't talked about including it.
Yes, through the warden. If there is no definition of tree plantation, landowners would not be able to clear these plantations if the intent is clearing the plantations. If the intent is clearing the plantations, it doesn't prevent them from applying for a silvicultural prescription and a good forestry cut and a good forestry practices to cut the forest. It doesn't prevent them from logging. They can still be logged under certain diameters and certain restrictions. So we are just providing a much more significant leeway for people to clear these plantations if they need to. The other challenge is the county would not know that these are cleared because they would be effectively exempt. So we would not know that something is done. Maybe when our bylaw enforcement official drives by and suddenly sees a large swath of land being removed, then there would be a further investigation. And so that is the challenge if we are exempting them. But if landowners are just generally following the process, notifying us with the notice of intent or notifying the county, then again, there is right now in the bylaw, the general cut, the good practices cut, and the logging operations under certain diameters. Again, that is allowed. They can pursue any of that within the tree plantations. That is the difference. I know there's a lot, there are multiple angles and multiple situations, and I don't think that the bylaw is imperfect, as all policy is. We are trying to address it from multiple angles and we're trying to accommodate as many people as possible. It just that is difficult, and I empathize with your position.
Okay. Any other questions? Deputy Warden North, go ahead, please.
I'm wondering if Councillor McDermott would like to make a motion regarding number one with adding as a crop, or I'd like to make that seconded, or
Sure. We could do that.
Okay, I'll first ask if there's any more question or discussion on the definitions part, or the tree plantation definition part. Okay, so looks like discussions come to a close, so chair is open to a motion on an option, so go ahead. Councilor McDermott.
I'd like to move option number one with the added words as a crop.
So the option A, tree plantation means a wooded area with intentionally planted or seeded trees as a crop.
Yep.
In a predetermined pattern or rows for commercial forestry purposes, including harvesting, and which is actively and continuously managed, keeping with the original purpose of planting or seeding. For greater clarity, a tree plantation is not a naturally evolved woodland.
And through the warden, if I may, and maybe there will be an addition to this section stating that that this, for greater clarity, this section will not apply retroactively. For greater clarity, the section will not apply retroactively. Or will apply, or for greater clarity, the section will apply as of the date the bylaw is passed.
I would support that.
Okay, and Councillor Dermott has so moved that as a definition for tree plantation. Is there a seconder? Deputy Warden Moore. We have a mover and seconder on the definition of the tree plantation, so floor is open for discussion. Councillor Duncan and then Councillor Kasenberg.
Yeah, just one comment. I think the addition of as a crop helps considerably with the previous tree plantations that the province invested in, because they were never planted as a crop. They were planted as a stewardship program through the province in partnership with the landlords. So they weren't planted as intention of a crop. So if with Councillor McDermott's suggestion of adding as a crop, that would preclude those plantations from being considered in this. So I think this is going to work out quite well.
Thank you. Councillor Kasenberg, your next on the speakers list.
So I'm no expert, obviously, on tree plantations and commercial intent around tree plantations, but I do find myself wondering if there's a 4 hectare section of trees that were intentionally planted for the purposes of fruit or whatever, we're saying that no, that's not a woodland. It can never be considered a woodland. I just want to make sure I understand that's the intent.
Through the warden, one of the modifications that we have to the bylaw is the inclusion of, similar to what others have done, is the inclusion of a cultivated fruit or nut orchard. So that is in line with what the province says. So if it is a nut or fruit orchard, that is all exempt from the definition of woodland by definition of the province. So that is taken care of. What we're talking about with respect to tree plantations likely would affect white pine, and potentially if we're talking about, let's say, cedar posts, or somebody wants to have like cedar posts as a commercial viable operation, that will be affected by it. So again, there are certain built-in definitions for fruit and nut orchards as the province has required. We have again stipulated them and completely aligned the bylaw otherwise with the province. Again, windbreaks and the tree plantations being the notable exceptions where we are trying to strike that balance of what our community wants.
Anything further? Last call for questions or comments. Okay, seeing none. Let's have the clerk repeat the motion forth by Councillor McDermott and seconded by Deputy Warden Orr.
Thank you through the board. And tree plantation means a wooded area with intentionally planted or seeded trees as a crop in a predetermined pattern or rows for commercial forestry purposes, including harvesting, and which is actively and continuously managed in keeping with the original purpose of planting or seeding. For greater clarity, a tree plantation is not a naturally evolved woodland, and this section applies as of the date the bylaw is passed.
That's the case, Bert. Sorry, one more question. So the words actively and continuously managed are words that could be disputed if I am following the bouncing ball. And I don't know what the standard is. I mean, is there some kind of standard about whether you're actively and continuously? The word continuously in particular is vaguely worrisome to me. Do you have any comments with regards, and again, acknowledging your earlier comment that no legislation is perfect. We'll always miss something, but like I could see someone taking an angle on that that's interesting.
Through the warden, that is correct. Technically, if there is a plantation and no work has been done on it, or if there is a plantation, or let's say a woodland and no work has been done on it, and somebody just clearly clears the shrubs and it's already in place, potentially there could be some misinterpretation of how the bylaw is intended. The words actively and continuously managed are essentially a legal safety net to make sure that there is a test of some sorts. There isn't specifically and on purpose, there is no active definition of there's no definition of actively and continuously managed in the bylaw. That will allow it, that will allow for a consideration of the facts, whether there is a trier of fact or there is a decision-making body at the end of this. But that will allow for the interpretation to be handled based on case law that exists in place. And this is generally, I know that it's very broad, but in terms of the context in which within which we're trying to create the definition, we're trying also not to be as prescriptive so as to tie the hands of the decision makers down the line. So we want to have a legal test of some sort. Again, how that's going to be interpreted depends on the facts of the case down the line. I know that this is not a perfect answer, but that's what we have right now.
Perhaps further stuff and would actively and continuously managed be viewed as what the prevailing standard of the industry would be at the time?
Absolutely, the industry standards would be applied to the case as to what is considered normal and what is considered to be something that is actively continuously managed as well. So yes, that will be part of the consideration for the court, if that's ever considered.
All right, so we have a motion that's moved and seconded. Ready to call the question? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so we've dealt with the definition that will be inserted into the bylaw. For our next piece of business then, Stephanie, you mentioned about determining what council needs to determine what they think is the appropriate applicable fee to the county for filing a notice of appeal, correct?
No more than that is correct. I'm directing your attention to the very last schedule of the bylaws. And if Treasurer Bridges, I'll ask Treasurer Bridges to provide us with some potential numbers for you to consider.
So one to council, the cost of an appeal based on a third party representative to be the expert in the area. The cost would be anywhere between $1,000 and $1,500 per video. That incorporates the time related to that contract expert as well as the administration to process the appeal through the organization.
And if I may, include more than, and so the decision becomes whether council will want to consider a full cost recovery or just a partial or no fee at all.
Yes, so there's a, so. Mr. Bridges has indicated a suggested range and it's up to council's discretion. They want to, how they want to operate within that range or the, or no fee at all, so. I guess we'll open the floor to some questions from council case.
I think I would prefer that the entirety of the taxpayers for the county don't pay for these kinds of actions. You know, there's private interest involved in addressing the ability to file an appeal when found in violation of the bylaw, and so I would recommend that we move as we generally do to full cost recovery as appropriate.
You're suggesting you would be promoting the $1,500.
That's what the treasurer tells us is the cost of processing the application and then hiring or engaging a third-party adjudicator for the purposes of an investigation. That person's time and bill coming back to the county of Perth. I think so.
Okay. And these are all alleged violations until they're proved, right? So. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Don't see any hands up, so the chair is willing to receive recommendation from council. So council case.
I'll move that we establish a fee for these appeals. I say $14.75 and be good with that, Treasurer Bridges. $14.99. The deal. I'll cede to Council Wilhelm's wisdom. Let's set it at $1,500.
So you're
exclusive of additional costs for reports. What else? What are the other?
Yes, through the warden, yes, there will be a section added. The section would state
this is for the filing.
This is for the filing, yes. So the applicable fee payable to the county of Perth for the filing of the notice of appeal shall be $1,500. It may be amended from time to time. For greater clarity, the appeal filing fee prescribed by this bylaw covers only the administrative processing of the appeal and does not include any costs associated with the preparation, compilation, reproduction, collection, or submission of any documents, records, data, studies, or other relevant materials considered appropriate in connection with the appeal. All such costs shall be the sole responsibility of and shall be borne by the appellant.
So moved by Councillor Kasenberg. Is there a second for that? Councillor Wilhelm seconds. Floor is open for further discussion. Questions? I need to repeat that or we're all good before I call the question. Okay, so I have a mover and a seconder. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. Thank you. All right, so those two pieces of the bylaw are all in place. Now we go back to the original report. So there's two pieces here. I'll break it into two. First of all, that council receives the tree injury bylaw final draft update report. Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Any further discussion? Deputy Warden Orr.
Can I just have clarification? Page 15 of 152 of 175. So you've got it in blue here. Have regard to applicable municipal standard operating procedures. So have we moved that we are asking really this is the common courtesy that bylaw officers on site, that is he's going they'll announce themselves?
Well, through the warden, yes, through the warden, the SOPs, the standard operating procedures will be introduced and they will have to abide by those.
Thank you. I just wanted to.
Councillor Wilhelm.
Yes, I guess, just on our notice of intent, On the very bottom, it says that they agree with the accordance, the county of Perth forest conservation bylaw. I would assume that would be changed to the,
That's, and through the warden, I apologize for that oversight, that will be changed.
Now say tree injury. Well,
The tree injury bylaw, yes, the difficulty with that specific form is that it is in a PDF format and it cannot be attached, so that's why only an image of it can be captured and included in the bylaw, but it will be changed to effect.
okay, Councilor McDermott.
just for clarification again, in the other offenses, we moved the municipal drainage works. That's on page 151. We moved it from there from someplace else. Is there a reason why it's not in exemptions?
Through the
Like putting it in other offenses makes that sounds like if you're doing drainage works, you're creating an offense.
through the warden, the drainage, so initially the drainage piece was separate.
Yep.
So there are two different components to the drainage piece. One is the municipal drains, which is addressed already. The other one is the private drains. So if there is any violation with respect to the private drains, that would be considered potentially an offense if there is an offense, and that's why they were included in the offense section, as that's what they speak to. If there is an offense, if there is no offense, then of course. Drain can proceed.
So we're not really talking about municipal drains, we're talking more about private drains.
That is correct. Through the warden, the municipal drains are already addressed in the bylaw and section 5, subsection 1, page 7 of the bylaw. It says the bylaw doesn't apply to any activities or matters undertaken by the county or lower tier municipality or local board of the lower tier municipality.
Yep, no, just want to make absolutely sure about that, so there would be no problems with municipal drains. Thank you.
Right, any further questions on the report? Deputy Warden Orr.
Just clarity, so we're just accepting this for information. We are coming back with the final draft another time where it's all cleaned up, or is this the final?
Well, right now, we're just dealing with the report. The second part would consider council approving the tree injury bylaw, including the changes we made, or if council wishes to have the cleaned up version come back, that's up to council's discretion. Right now, we're focusing on receiving the report as presented.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a mover and a seconder to do that? If there are no other questions, then comments from the council, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving the update report? Opposed, if any, that's carried. All right, so now, what are council's wishes? We have the last two pieces in place. Does council wish to endorse the bylaw now, or do we wish to have the cleaned up copy, the amended copy in hand before we proceed? Councilor Duncan.
I think I'm ready to move forward with this. We put a lot of time into this, and I think that the last two issues were resolved today, and I think it's time that we pass the bylaw and move forward.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Councilor Smith.
Thanks. The Warren, I totally agree. Councilor Duncan, let's go. We did great input for this process from our community, from staff, all of my colleagues. I think we're ready to go as Warren's mentioned with the updates that we've done today.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the floor? Okay, so I'll read the next portion then and get it on the floor. The recommendation is that council approves the updated tree injury bylaw for the required readings, i.e. the readings that would have to be put forward through the confirmatory bylaw. So is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councilor Duncan, seconded by Councilor Kasenberg, that council approves the updated tree injury bylaw for the required readings. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? carried. Thanks. Got that item. Checking the clock here, we've been in for 2 hours. Does council wish to carry on, or do we wish for comfort break? Okay, we'll have a 10-minute recess and we'll get back, 11:05. Call our meeting back to order. We'll resume after our break. It's 11:09. We'll resume with item 8.4 paramedic services, 8.4.1 emergency management program mid-year report, and we'll welcome to the floor Chris Keyser. Morning, sir.
Morning to the warden, members of council, county staff. Thank you for taking the opportunity to hear my face-to-face, talk to you about my report. I can tell from your meeting this morning, you guys, everybody here cares quite a bit about their communities, efficient delivery of service, people's well-being and safety. So these are all values that come into this program, so I'll believe them as well. This year, we've done a lot of administrative background refresh and revamp. The critical infrastructure list, the last full revamp of that list was in 2023, so we've completely gone over that and added a few things. An emergency information center, which is an important concept in managing an emergency, to make sure the right information is getting out to the public as well as into the EOC for decision making and situational awareness. One new topic or new item that we've added is a critical equipment list, which has identified all of our locations for all of our heavy equipment, all of our sandbags, all of our materials to respond to emergencies across all of our municipalities. So now we have a shared list, so we know where our resources are, where we need to call on them, and who we need to call and contact to be able to bring those resources in when we meet our capacities. The other large project was the HIRA, so the Hazard and Identification and Risk Assessment Project. The last time it was added to was in 2019. There's 83 different risk assessments on that. I've gone through each one. I'm happy to say I only have 7 left to do a full revamp of that entire document. And I've switched it over to turn into more of a living document so we can update it. We test our plans on each one of those risks, and we write down our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for each one of those on the document itself. So now it's become more of a living document to help guide us in our response to certain emergencies. That was one other thing. The other thing in the report was the cybersecurity response plan. So last year we tested our response to cybersecurity, and as promised, I produced a cyber incident response plan to all of our partners and all of our local governments. This year we tested it again in a different simulation, and we came out really well. With very little changes, and now we're just finalizing that to be published in each one of our local ECGs or our group control groups. The rest is currently in there. I did mention that I was about $70,000 under budget last year. I just want to highlight that there was 1 quarter of salary not included in that. And some of the things to work on moving forward would be to increase our public education campaign as well as our local internal ECG training. So those costs have not been factored into that. So before we get too excited, there is some spending that does need to come in the future. And then I would open it up to any questions.
Very good. Thanks, Chris. Colleagues, any questions for Chris on that report? Okay, I don't see any questions, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Recommendation reads as follows: is that council receives the emergency management program mid-year report for information. Moved by Councillor Kellum, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. Call the question. All those in favor? All those defending? That's carried. Thank you. Item 9, council reports 9.1. Board's activity report is posted for May 2026 for information. There's no questions on the activities for May. Recommendation reads as follows, that council receives the warden's activity report, May 2026, for information. Moved by Councilor McDermott, seconded by Councilor Wilhelm. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, it's carried. Thank you. Section 10 bylaws, we have two to deal with. First one is concerning council remuneration. 10.1, bylaw 4074-2026, resolution that bylaw being a bylaw to establish remuneration for council in their capacity as members of Perth County Council, and to repeal bylaw 3896-2022, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed June 18th, 2026. By Councillor Duncan, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? If any, that's carried. 10.2, bylaw 4075-2026, to regulate the destruction or injuring of trees in woodlands in the county of Perth. Recommendation is that bylaw 4075, being a bylaw to regulate the destruction or injuring of trees in woodlands in the county of Perth, and to repeal bylaw 3557-2016 and bylaw 3731-2019, be read the first, second, and third time, and finally passed June 18th, 2026. Moved by Councillor Caselenberg, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, item 11, notice of motions. We do have one item, 11.1, merging of properties under the Planning Act, and this is something brought forward by Councillor McDermott. So floor is yours, Councillor McDermott, to bring that to council's attention now.
Yeah, I just simply asked for a bit of report, like which act it's covered under, and I believe it says the Planning Act, which I did not know. And there was some more information that I was sent that I'd like to share with the rest of the council, and as I understand it, that there will be something come back on that. So there'll be a fair bit more information come for everybody. It's just that it seems that in a lot of our municipalities, this is something that seems to cause an awful lot of people a lot of problems and a lot of money. So I just want more information to know who to lobby to see if it could get fixed.
Okay, thank you. So we will when I'll ask CAO Wolf when council might expect to see that come back to council again.
So thank you. Through the board, the notice of motion for discussion will be listed for the July 2nd meeting, and then we'll look to council to give us direction to pursue that information. And at that time, Andrea Hacker will be available to be able to speak to the matter as well. So July 2nd.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Section 12, other business, looking to colleagues, see if there's any other business that they wish to bring forward at this time. Okay, seeing none. Item 13, announcements. Any announcements to bring forward? Okay, no announcements from councillors, just a couple of comments. Myself and Deputy Warden Orr, we had the pleasure of attending the Blissville Memorial Hospital Gala fundraiser earlier this month with MP John Nader, his wife, and MP Matt Ray and his wife as our guests. Very well attended event. Very impressive event. Lots of funds were raised through the silent auction and the live auction in support of the hospital foundation. So it was great to see a lot of tremendous community spirit and involvement and engagement on that front. Councillor Kellerman was also there with us as well. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, and his wife. So then, with that happy note, then it kind of segues into the sad note as to why it's important to have the excellent healthcare system that we do and services. Friday night, late in the evening, both the deputy warden or myself were notified of the tragic accident that occurred at Mapleton. The response included assistance from Perth County EMS. One of our deputy commanders and two of our EMS crews were dispatched to the scene to assist with the tragic circumstances. So again, sympathies and condolences to Mapleton Township and Wellington County, all the families and residents that were affected. And also, again, thanks and gratitude to our EMS services to be there to respond to the call in the best way that they know how. Just want to acknowledge their dedication and commitment to such tragic circumstances. So with that, if there's no other announcements, then we do have a closed session to attend to. We have one closed session item to read out here, that council moved into closed session at approximately 11:20 a.m. in accordance with section 239 of the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended, to consider a matter pertaining to litigation. Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Wilhelm. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, that is carried. So we will move into closed session 11:21, and need a couple minutes to get reset for that. Okay, we are back in open session again at 11:43 a.m. We have discussed our matters pertaining to litigation in closed session. So item 15, confirmatory bylaw is next on our agenda. 15.1, resolution reads as follows: that bylaw 4076/2026 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the Corporation of the County of Perth at its regular meeting held June 18th, 2026 is read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed June 18th, 2026. Moved by Councillor Kasenberg, seconded by Councillor McDermott. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. And all of our prescribed agenda items have been covered for today's meeting. So item 16, adjournment, resolution that council meeting be adjourned at approximately 11:44 a.m. By Councillor McDermott, second by Councillor Smith. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Good day, everyone, and happy Canada Day. Our next meeting is July 2nd. So take care, everybody.